If you're looking to stay informed with the latest analysis on the stories that are shaping our world in the areas of foreign policy, national security, and domestic politics, consider becoming a member of the DSR Network. With the DSR Network podcasts, stay ahead of the curve on global affairs. Each episode across our more than 10 shows features top experts, policymakers, and thought leaders who break down complex issues into digestible, engaging conversations. From breaking news to historical context, we cover the latest topics that matter most. Whether it's the intricacies of international diplomacy, the latest in national security strategies, or the dynamics of U.S. politics, the DSR Network has you covered. Members receive an ad-free listening experience, bonus content for virtually all of our shows, an invitation to join the DSR Slack community, enhanced show notes for select podcasts, and much more. Visit thedsrnetwork.com/buy and enter code JULY2024 to receive 50% off the regular membership price for the first year or first month. That's thedsrnetwork.com/buy and code JULY2024. Thank you very much for your support.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. In recent days, Donald Trump and MAGA media figures have really ramped up the attacks on Kamala Harris's laugh, her personality, and her temperament. It's gotten so bad that some Trump allies have taken the extraordinary step of begging these MAGA celebrity types to cease and desist. Now, these attacks are just sleazy and repulsive to their core, but in a sense, the fact that MAGA is going here so manically suggests an inability to even entertain an unthinkable possibility. What if Harris's laugh and energy is actually well suited to this moment in American politics, at least to people outside the MAGA bubble? Today we're talking about this with Jennifer Fernandez-Ancona, co-founder of the progressive strategy group Way to Win, who has been circulating memos among Democrats urging them to respond aggressively to racist and sexist attacks on Harris. Good to have you on, Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Greg. It's great to be here.
So at his Michigan rally over the weekend, Trump really turned up the sludge machine. Here's what he said.
From the moment we take back the White House from crooked Joe Biden and Kamala, I call her Laughing Kamala. You ever watch her laugh? She's crazy. You know, you can tell a lot by a laugh. No, she's crazy. She's nuts.
Then on Newsmax, former Trump administration official Sebastian Gorka said Harris cackles like a schoolgirl. Now, some have urged caution. Rick Grinnell, another former Trump official, said, we cannot attack her for her style or her laugh. But then, again on Newsmax, MAGA personality Chris Coles explicitly rejected this out of hand, saying, I completely disagree because she's so artificial. Jen, I don't hear Harris's laugh, and I don't perceive her temperament that way at all. What's your sense of how the middle of the country sees this stuff?
Yeah, well, first of all, I will say that what we found in talking to voters over the last week or so, and what other groups have found who've been researching on Harris, like Emily's List for the past few years, that VP Harris is still really undefined in the minds of most voters. Surprisingly, she has 100% name ID, so they know who she is, but they don't know much about her. They don't know much about her portfolio or what she stands for. I think what we're seeing right now is an introduction of Kamala Harris to America, a reintroduction, really. What's interesting about the clips you shared is that I think it is having the absolute opposite effect with the exact audiences that we need to be stronger with in this election, namely young people and people of color who get most of their news online. We have seen her become an avatar of sorts for a lot of pent-up energy, excitement, and frankly, defiance over the darkness that we've been seeing coming out of MAGA for the past several years. And I think it's inspiring. And it's the kind of authenticity and authentic joy that all of us, frankly, have been desperate for a little while now.
If I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that when Trump goes out there and ridicules her laugh and calls her crazy and dumb, and other MAGA personalities and celebrities do the same, there's a whole bunch of racist stuff to the DEI candidate. When they do that, they're actually going to provoke a backlash among the very voters out there who need to be reintroduced to Harris, right?
Absolutely. I think we've seen proof in that around how some of the memes that have really taken fire on TikTok and Instagram over the last week or so, a couple weeks, are actually pieces that were pushed by Republican oppo machines in the past. So, for example, she gave a speech that was about equity to a room, and she told a story about how her mother used to say, "What's wrong with you young people? You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of everything that came before you." So that clip was used to show, oh, she's silly, oh, she's crazy, but it has been turned into a literal summer anthem by Gen Z, which is getting millions and millions of views and is just become, a way for everyone to take part in this moment in a joyful way. The same thing where there was a Republican oppo piece showing her saying over and over again this statement about how we can see what can be unburdened by what has been. And it's so funny because it's a profound statement about her candidacy right now. And so people are using that language. They're taking it back, frankly, from the right-wing oppo folks and making it our own and using it as part of how we tell the story about this moment and why we're supporting Kamala Harris.
It's such an interesting point. I mean, obviously all the stuff that they're doing, like with those memes on the right and so forth, is code for depicting Harris as a lightweight and an airhead and so forth. Some of them are explicit on that. Trump calls her dumb as a rock. But for those who don't want to go there, they can just say, oh, her laugh sounds silly and airheaded. You're advising Democrats to take this on frontally themselves, right? Even if it is backfiring in some parts of the culture. So how should Democrats do that?
Well, first, I just want to say, if they're going to try to paint her as an airhead or dumb, they're going to have an uphill battle. The poll that we did in battleground states among Democrats and independent voters, who are the core of our anti-MAGA coalition, showed this was in early July, before she was even named as the nominee, the absolute top trait that people associate with Kamala Harris is intelligence. Out of all the options, 54% of voters chose intelligent. So I think they're going to have a hard time with that particular attack. In terms of what Democrats should do, I mean, I believe that what we've always said is we can't run away from this conversation. We can't pretend it's not happening. We can't ignore it, because these attacks are going to come. So we really advise and encourage people to take the attacks head on to the extent that we can, whether it is taking them and turning them into funny memes that can be blasted out to an internet army who can counter them, or even just pointing out, the way I think Governor Andy Beshear did so beautifully in his race. We're about vision, not division. This is a choice between two very different futures. And you've heard Kamala Harris talk about that in her stump speech over the last couple of days. If we keep pivoting back to that core message of what this election is about and saying that we actually have a vision for this country, we know what we want to accomplish, whether it's helping people get a better life, like she's been saying, helping folks not just get by, but get ahead. That's a super important way to make the economy personal for people, by saying we're going to protect our reproductive freedoms. And so many of our freedoms, the freedom to vote, the freedom to be free from gun violence, the more we focus on the future, the agenda that we want to accomplish, and paint them as trying to take us backward, that is what is going to work. And you've seen that become now a chant at her rallies. We're not going back. We're not going back.
So Harris opens up this whole forward versus backward frame that Biden, just for obvious reasons, could never pull off. And that's especially powerful now that we have a nominee who's 59 versus Trump, who's an old man and a decrepit man and decaying in front of everybody's eyes, right? and someone who was already president and then got beaten. So the forward versus backward frame works pretty well here. I want to say, though, I think this whole attack line from MAGA actually reveals another limitation on their part. They're kind of unable to imagine that people in the middle of the electorate might perceive Harris as a real person. Now, I don't know if Harris will end up winning swing voters in the numbers she needs. This will be very hard fought. As you say, she's undefined, lots up in the air. But I think it's likely that moderates and independents are not going to see Harris in those MAGA terms at all, whether or not they end up voting for her. And this is what I want to ask you. I mean, I think this shows MAGA politics is kind of addicted to humiliation and belittlement. You do a lot of work among swing voters. Do you think they're likely to accept the humiliating and belittling characterization of her that MAGA is pushing?
I don't think so. And I think part of it is that what we have found in elections over and over again in the age of MAGA is that when voters, swing voters in particular, are really faced with the choice between what MAGA is offering and what Democrats are offering, if they can get beyond the personalities and that level of things and just really understand deeply what will happen and what won't happen depending on their vote, they have voted against MAGA and have voted for Democrats every time. They have made that choice. We've seen it in the special elections. We've seen it in the midterm elections throughout this entire time. And of course, we saw it in 2020 as well. So the coalition of voters that we need to win, we don't need to win every white swing voter to win, as you know. We have to build a diverse coalition. We need to win a lot of those voters in the Electoral College states. And we can have a big turnout from younger voters, from Black voters, from Latino voters who are more supportive of Democrats and will be on the team of Kamala to make up some of the difference of where she may lose. But I really believe at the end of the day, because we've seen this in the midterms when people were worried about inflation, but then they thought about their daughters and whether their daughters would have access to an abortion if they were raped. That trumps for them whether their bank account is up or down at any given moment. Honestly, our personal freedoms being under attack, MAGA being responsible for trying to strip our freedoms away, at the end of the day, that is very toxic to swing voters. So I don't think that these personality, surface level attacks are going to work.
Well, speaking of the Democratic coalition, there's a new poll from the New York Times and Siena that finds them in a dead heat nationally among likely voters, 48% for Trump, 47% for Harris, and they have it at 47 to 45 for Harris among independents.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so some other numbers. Among 18 to 29-year-olds, Harris leads Trump by 59 to 38. Among Hispanics, Harris leads 60 to 36. Among college-educated whites, Harris leads 56-41. She's not where she needs to be with Black voters. It's in the 70s. I think you got to get up into the 80s maybe. She's struggling among non-college whites, 29 to 67, which is substantially behind Biden in 2020. But I do think that we're seeing some signs that she's reconstituting the Democratic coalition, right?
Absolutely. I definitely see those signs. I mean, we saw those signs in the poll that we did before Biden even dropped out, that she was showing a lot of strength with the exact part of the coalition that we had been struggling with. And what we've heard of those double doubters, the people who do not like Trump and who did not like Biden, that part of the coalition is part of why we were in many of those swing states leading up to this moment. So I think that what we're seeing in this latest polling is just there's so much room to grow. The fact that we are already doing so much better just with Harris announcing and the surge of new energy before really any major money has been spent trying to define her, trying to get her message out in the traditional ways that we do in politics, whether it's TV ads or digital work or on the ground. That's all going to start now as we head to the convention and then post-convention. So I think that's exciting, and it really shows that this move was needed to get us on the right path to win.
I want to go back to MAGA for a second and point to another limitation that I think they suffer from. The whole American carnage worldview, the idea that the country is in severe crisis, that everything's out of control, sliding into absolute ruin and disaster. I do wonder if that blinds MAGA figures to the possibility that a personality and temperament like Harris's might actually prove appealing right now to people who are sick of politics and, in particular, tired of MAGA's relentless darkness, belittlement of others, chaos, sadism, and hate. Is that blindness a real thing, and is it a weakness?
I do think it's a weakness. I think I felt that when Trump chose J.D. Vance as his running mate. It was such a doubling down of that dark analysis of the world and that dark future that they're painting. And so I think they've overplayed their hand. I think that they've made some mistakes coming into this moment. And I do feel that what we've seen so far around Kamala Harris is, like you say, I've seen her, I've known her a long time. I'm from California. So I remember seeing her throughout her whole career, from the time she was a district attorney in San Francisco all the way through, of course, when she was Attorney General of California. And she has really come a long way in how well she speaks and how much she kind of commands the stage. Her leadership she's just shining right now. She's just shining through with joy, with commitment, passion, purpose. And I just think we can see in how the online young people are responding to her, that it's working. It's cutting through the idea of politics as usual. If there's anything we know about this moment, is that people are tired of politics as usual. They don't want the same thing over and over again. And so having this new voice, seeing this new energy, and I think the way she authentically shines, the way she laughs in her belly, that's very relatable. Many of us laugh like that. And so I do agree that she may be the perfect leader for this moment that we didn't know we already had.
I mean, this is the thing about presidential races. You just never know how anyone's going to fare under that kind of intense scrutiny. And you never know who's going to kind of catch fire and who's going to just sort of sink. I want to ask you about Harris's new campaign video in this context. It's set to the Beyonce song Freedom, and it's clearly supposed to be a direct counter to MAGA politics, and that it depicts MAGA accurately, I think, as just this cesspool of negativity and nastiness and viciousness. Then it holds up the possibility of something better and brighter. And I noticed something, Jen. In the part of the video showing this alternative, the footage almost invariably shows people laughing and having fun. Is that an accident?
Actually, no, it's not an accident. I saw that too. It's one of the things we've seen in a lot of the research that we've done, actually, where we've tried to say, like, what should we stand for? What should the left stand for? What should progressive stand for? And when we asked that to activists recently, a group of us were doing some work on this. Honestly, one of the top performing images was just people having fun at a barbecue, laughing and having a good time, a diverse group of friends hanging out and having a barbecue. That I noticed that too in the ad. It was a lot of images of people just living their lives, being happy, having dinner with their family, doing things, enjoying life. That's the kind of freedom that this election is about. And I completely agree that it's such a perfect contrast to the MAGA agenda, which is all about going backwards. It's all about darkness. It's all about American carnage and trying to make people afraid. But I think people are tired of being afraid, and they're ready to get out there and be happy and be joyful and live our lives, which we can do with a different kind of politics that Kamala Harris is really pushing.
And so when they attack her laugh, I think they're actually really kind of screwing up pretty royally, because, that is going to be, I predict, and you have predicted, a real strength of hers against all the MAGA nastiness and negativity. Jen Ancona, thanks so much for coming on with us today.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'd love to anytime.
Folks, make sure to check out some new content we have up at TNR.com for you. Michael Tomasky explaining the race the Democrats need to run now, and Robert Schlesinger explaining why Kamala Harris's VP pick matters, not in the way you think. We'll see you all Monday. You've been listening to The Daily Blast with me, your host, Greg Sargent. The Daily Blast is a New Republic podcast and is produced by Riley Fessler and the DSR Network.